here we go. Part 2. And where I was is speaking about the John Muir Trail and where the John Muir and the Pacific Crest Trails come together. That is where takes place a large, in August, a large gathering of groups migrate to this area to mix, to change mates and exchange different bloodlines through groups. And also, after these groups all hit this area here, if you know where this is, it's a very special place where these two cross. And it's where the western side of the Bigfoot, which would be, say, the Bakersfield side, the Central Valley side, come up in August and meet the eastern side of the Bigfoot, which would be, from Bishop all the way up to Carson City and Mono Lake. So these two sides come up and meet in August in this area, and they meet there for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they migrate back down right before the first snow comes in September. So I've tracked groups that move basically on the eastern side. So the eastern migrations, they move down to Mono Lake, one large group, and from Mono Lake it goes into over the mountains called over the mountains, and it drops into what's called Trona and Bishop Valley, Lone Pine, Independence, the foothills. That's where they'll stay. And then the western groups will go back down into the Central Valley foothills, from Bakersfield all the way up to Napa. So you've got these large groups that migrate, yearly up and down the mountains in the Sierras, where the Southern California ones around the San Gabriel Mountains, the Malibu Mountains, they basically follow herds of deer, or they follow the herds of wild burro. Okay, so we talked about what some of the ones here in Southern California eat. Some of the larger groups around Big Bear and what they call Holcomb Valley, Silverwood Lake area, they feed on burro herds. They'll come down through the Mojave River, and there's a spot, a large forest between the city of Victorville and the city of Apple Valley. Well, it's filled with beaver, and they'll go in there, pull beaver, move farther north, and then between Victorville and Barstow, and then you'll get a lot of wild hogs, 300-pound hog. So they move through there and pull hog, and then they'll travel back 15, 20 miles back up on the riverbed in one night, back up to Silverwood Lake. So they'll move from Silverwood Lake, go 30 miles towards Barstow, grab food, and then come back up in the mountains in a single night. Or there'll be times when they'll actually stay in the forest, the large forest between the two cities and the Mojave Riverbed between Victorville and Apple Valley. Then we have large groups in the San Gabriel Mountains, which they call a place called Devil's Punch Bowl. Everybody knows that anything that was named Devil has a Devil Canyon, Devil's Lake, Devil's Punch Bowl, Devil's Rocks, Devil's Mountain, Devil's Trail. It always comes back to that area being very, very Bigfooty, and the reason it was called is because of the Bigfoot in the area. So, and most people that know about Bigfoot already know that area is called Devil this or Devil that. We're called Devil this because of Bigfoot in the area. So I went through rock throwing. I went through a good heart. Okay, and so the last thing I want to go through is people saying they have dimensional powers, and I want to say once again that it's not that they have dimensional powers. It's that they're so intuitive and tuned into you and where you're at, moving through the forest, that they can hide so well that it almost seems like they're disappearing. So, and the things they do and how sneaky they are about everything, coming up right behind you, setting things behind you, and then tiptoeing off, that if you let your mind go, that could seem like it was something interdimensional, or they have some kind of powers, but that's just you letting your mind take it to another level. You have to just know that they're animals. They're very intelligent animals. They have their own language. They have their own families. They have their own societies. They have their own systems of elders and control, respectful control over their own kind, and respect towards us when we respect them. So they are ninjas of the forest, and as far as I've seen, they can be telepathic, and I know they light me up with scopesia. It's like they almost yelling at me, like, "Hey, I'm right here. Like, what do you have for me today?" You know, and I'll take them food. So at a very young age, I got to meet my first face to face was 6 years old, a tree peeper, behind Rim of the World High School here in the San Gabriel Mountains, and then my first open face to face with a large male was near Mammoth Mountain, California. And that's where I met a group that ended up following me around everywhere I went, and began talking to me as I fed them. So once again, I hope I answered a lot of questions about what they are, what they're not, the areas where you can find them, how you can interact with them. Once again, if you want to interact with one and you know they're in your area, the first thing you do is take a bag of apples, half a bag, it can be heavy, and when you walk into their area where you know they are, where you find their stick structure, you call out to them, "Big brother." You hold the apples up as you're moving to the place you're going to leave it, and you put the apples up in the tree. And keep the second half bag of apples, because I just have to get two. The second one is your escape apples. So if you're walking out of the forest and you do run into one, you're not empty-handed because you left your apples there. You have the second bag that you might have to give to one to let you out, because he has no idea that you left the bag of apples back there. So you keep two bags when you go in. You give one, you give it to them. The second one you have in your backpack. And if you're walking out and you run into one, you know, face to face, and you pull the apples out, and that's your free pass to go past him. You pull out your apples, you show them to them. Don't look them in the eye. I've never looked a large male in the eye. I've always looked at his chin or his chest. I've always known to put my head down and keep my hand up. And I learned this from Jane Goodall when I was very small. In 1969, I saw Jane Goodall, 72, and to be obedient and to be submissive to a large primate, you have to duck your head and you have to have your hand up. And I would have the apple or food in my hand, and it's almost like you let them, scent your hand. They touch your hand, and then you're free to be among them. But yeah, that's something I just learned as a kid, like 6 years old. I knew 7 years old. I wouldn't piss my pants. Another thing is, like, how did I get around them so much without being fearful? Okay, this is how it happened. At age 6, I'm in this campground in the middle of the forest. I'm a block away from any adults, and I'm fishing. And something keeps stealing my fish. Something keeps stealing my lunch, and I'm getting frustrated. The next year, and every time we go to this campground, we're there for 2 weeks. 2 weeks in the forest, right? So I am there, and I hear people. I hear these Germans or Bulgarians or Dutch or Russians. There's always foreigners in the campground. Different. There'll be Chinese or Asian people talking. So you hear somebody walking on the trail, maybe behind you in the trees, and talking harder. And then pretty soon I realized, like, okay, well, why don't they keep going? Why are they just there behind me in the trees talking? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and about the third year, I had one throw rocks at me. But right before he threw a rock, I heard the chattering, and the rocks kept landing next to me, and I yell at him, "Hey, I'm down here. I'm fishing. Be careful. Don't throw rocks." So they answer me, "Hey, hey, 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 hey." They answer me. So they will mimic you. I know a lot of people know that. So I said, "Hey, it's me." And at this time, I kind of figured out I had a tree peeker the year before look at me. And then so as I say, "Hey, it's me," the second time, one that's only like 10 feet away, didn't even know he was there. I thought I was yelling at the one throwing rocks 20 feet. The one 10 feet away steps out of the bush. He's a 12-foot reddish male. He just kind of looks at me and kind of gives me like a hand wave, and then steps back around the bush. And I see his head, rolled across the bush. I'm freaked out. but I had to see him again. So I dropped my fishing pole, I run around the bush, and he's gone. But it smelled like death. It smelled like a rotten deer when I got around the bush. And then that was like one of those moments that I could understand why you would think they would disappear. But just as I ran around that bush, he had to have just disappeared, ran on another bush right there. But so they know when you're going to come. They have some kind of sense that you're going to come at them or know them, and they have some kind of sense where they can tell you, hey, look over here, I'm standing right here. So they can do that scopopedia. They know how to trigger that in you. So they do have telepathic abilities. I understand that because I felt them talking to me. But as far as like moving out of dimension or disappearing, I haven't witnessed anything like that. And anything other than they're just a species of a different type of human. I don't see them doing anything magic or disappearing like that. The last important thing I want to tell you about them. So to interact with them, yeah, bring some food, for them, and talk to them. Say hello, brother. Like I said, a lot of them, especially the ones in national parks, already know English pretty well because people, there's hundreds of people in national parks that can go and know they're there and they're not scared. And the reason you're not scared, like I said, I had been dealing for years. By the time the first one stepped out in front of me, I already knew what they were. I've already seen them look at me. So at that moment, I had no fear to run because they were always right close to me, just hiding. And after a few years, like the third year, I understood why they were hiding. Because I've watched other campers come into the campground, throw all their stuff in their car, and